On May 5, 2025, Ford Motor Company stunned the nation by suspending its annual financial guidance, a move that signaled crisis at the heart of American industry. The cause: President Donald Trump's newly imposed tariffs, which threatened to cripple Ford, a company woven into the fabric of the nation's identity. Ford projected a staggering $1.5 billion hit to its earnings for the year, a figure that sent shockwaves through Wall Street and Main Street alike. The company's first quarter net income had already plummeted to just $471 million, down from $1.3 billion the year before. The suspension of financial guidance was an admission that Ford could no longer predict its own future. In global manufacturing, predictability is everything. Its sudden absence signaled a company on the brink. This was the moment the theoretical consequences of a trade war became terrifyingly real. Ford's CEO, Jim Farley, had warned that aggressive tariffs could blow a hole in the US industry we've never seen. Now, that hole was opening, and Ford was at its epicenter. The company that survived the Great Depression and World War II now faced a threat born not from foreign competition, but from Washington, D.C. The engine of this American giant had stalled, and the entire nation held its breath. For millions, Ford's crisis was a personal one, threatening jobs, communities, and the American dream. The trade war's impact was no longer abstract. It was parked in driveways and echoing through empty factories. Ford's announcement was a warning. The storm had arrived, and no one was immune. The Ford crisis was triggered by President Trump's sweeping new tariffs, announced on March 4, 2025. A 25% tariff hit nearly all goods from Canada and Mexico, and a 10% tariff targeted imports from China. The administration claimed these measures would protect American jobs and rebalance unfair trade relationships. While some in the United Auto Workers supported the move, most industry leaders saw it as a blunt instrument, ignoring the realities of modern manufacturing. The market's reaction was swift. The Dow plunged over 600 points, and automaker shares nosedived. Analysts warned the tariffs could wipe out profits for Detroit's Big Three. For the auto sector, reliant on cross-border supply chains, the tariffs were a direct hit, throwing a wrench into one of the world's most efficient manufacturing systems. The consequences were immediate, and the pain was just beginning. For Ford, the tariffs were a direct and devastating blow. The company faced a projected $2.5 billion cost increase, with vehicles like the Mustang Mach-E and Super Duty trucks suddenly far more expensive to build. Ford scrambled to reroute shipments, even sending vehicles from Mexico to Canada first to dodge the full tariff, an expensive, complex workaround. Diesel engines for Ford's most profitable trucks, made in Mexico, now cost 25% more to import. The very supply chain that once made Ford competitive had become its greatest vulnerability. With profits plunging and costs soaring, Ford's leadership faced impossible choices: absorb the losses, raise prices, or cut jobs and operations. The tariffs created a hostile environment where even a giant like Ford struggled to survive. Every rerouted truck, every delayed shipment, drained resources further. The financial pressure mounted daily, threatening Ford's future. The billion-dollar blow was more than a loss, it was an existential threat. Ford's integrated system, built for free trade, was now its Achilles heel. The company was fighting for survival in a landscape transformed overnight. The tariffs' impact quickly hit American consumers. Studies predicted new car prices could rise by $1,000 to $9,000, depending on the model's foreign content. For many families, a new SUV or pickup became an unaffordable luxury overnight. Sticker shock chilled demand. Buyers delayed purchases, turned to used cars, or left the market entirely. The tariffs also fueled broader inflation, adding up to $1,000 a year to household costs. Dealerships, squeezed by rising wholesale prices and angry customers, saw sales volumes plummet. The dream of owning a new car faded for many, replaced by the reality of rising costs. The policy meant to protect American jobs was making life more expensive for everyone. The trade war's true cost was now measured in empty showrooms and strained family budgets. The 2025 tariffs shattered the North American auto industry's integrated supply chain. For decades, automakers in the US, Canada, and Mexico operated as one seamless system, with parts crossing borders multiple times before final assembly. Trump's tariffs treated allies as adversaries, slapping a massive tax on this established flow. Over half of the 8 million vehicles imported into the US came from its neighbors. Now all were hit. The fallout was catastrophic. GM slashed profit forecasts, Stellantis suspended guidance, and costs soared across the board. Ford, with more domestic production, fared slightly better, but no company was spared. The crisis exposed the flaws of a protectionist approach in a globalized industry. Industry leaders called for targeted reforms, but the sweeping tariffs left no room for nuance. The result? A fractured, less competitive North American auto sector, facing an uncertain future. The system that once made the continent strong was now its greatest weakness. America's tariff offensive sparked immediate international retaliation, turning a domestic policy into a global trade war. Canada hit back with 25% tariffs on over $20 billion of US goods and threatened even more. Symbolic moves like Ontario banning American-made alcohol made the conflict personal for consumers. Mexico quickly followed with its own tariffs, targeting key US industries. The North American trade bloc was unraveling, replaced by bitter tit-for-tat disputes. China, too, retaliated, imposing new duties on American exports, especially agricultural products. US farmers, already battered by previous disputes, faced new taxes and shrinking markets. American companies like Ford now faced higher costs at home and new barriers abroad. The global backlash squeezed margins from both ends, making it harder to compete anywhere. The interconnected global economy meant every action triggered a chain reaction of pain. Ford and other multinationals were caught in the crossfire, paying the price for isolationist policy. The world was on edge, and American workers bore the brunt. The trade war's reach was global, its consequences inescapable. The cost of protectionism was now measured in lost markets and broken alliances. As tariffs battered Ford's core business, the company faced another crisis: its costly transition to electric vehicles. Ford's Model E division was projected to lose over $5 billion in 2025 alone, compounding years of losses. The trade war drained capital needed for EV innovation, forcing Ford to cancel major projects like its next-generation electrical architecture. Profitable gasoline vehicles, once the financial bridge to the future, were now crippled by tariffs. Ford was fighting on two fronts, struggling to fund tomorrow's cars while today's profits evaporated. The message to the industry was clear: if Ford couldn't weather this storm, who could? The tariffs didn't just threaten today's jobs, they jeopardized the future of American auto innovation. Behind the headlines, Ford's crisis was a human tragedy. Tens of thousands of workers faced layoffs, reduced hours, and the specter of plant closures. Communities built around auto plants saw local businesses suffer as paychecks disappeared. Families cut back, postponed dreams, and struggled to make ends meet. The very jobs tariffs were meant to protect were now the most vulnerable. The pain rippled outward. Suppliers, diners, and entire towns felt the shock. The interconnected economy meant no one was insulated from the fallout. The trade war's irony was stark. A policy to save jobs had put them at risk. For many, the cost was not just economic, it was personal and profound. By summer 2025, Ford and America stood at a crossroads. The company's future, and that of the US manufacturing sector, hung in the balance, hostage to trade policy and global retaliation. The crisis exposed deep vulnerabilities in an interconnected world where protectionist walls trap as much as they shield. The promise of tariffs clashed with the reality of higher prices and lost jobs. The debate was no longer academic, it was about livelihoods, communities, and the American dream. Ford's struggle became a cautionary tale about the unintended consequences of economic isolation. The journey through this crisis had only begun, and the final destination was unknown.